think there are baseball universals. If baseball is a thing that you care deeply about, chances are it connects to family, it connects to home. There's a lot of nostalgia wrapped up in that. That's what initially drew me to baseball, and what keeps bringing me back to it is the stories people tell and what those points of attachment look like for all of us. When I think about what does it look like to teach this to students or have more productive conversations about it, it starts with how do we understand the history in more nuanced ways. The beauty of teaching at Notre Dame is students are our conversation partners. They bring their own perspectives, and that's an incredible thing.
I didn't know much about baseball kind of coming in. And I think a large part of that is because, like, as a black man or like as a black person, baseball was never, like, I kind of played it a little bit growing up, but it was never something that I felt that, like, I could identify with. It didn't feel like it was for me. But I really feel like learning more about the Negro Leagues and, like, different black players. Like, I see how important baseball was, like, specifically to my community. These were, like, very talented baseball players. They just did not have, like, the same opportunity that, like, their white peers might have had.
The idea of baseball history is not this neutral thing. It's people making choices about what stories we tell. And where we are in the present is connected to that history. And to be able to say, like, hey, in your community, there are stories that are worth telling. There are living descendants. There are parts of this history that belong to your community is a really powerful thing to be able to think about.
Foundry Field is located in Southeast neighborhood, which is just south and east of downtown South Bend. This space looked like it intended to be a baseball field, but it really wasn't, and it looked like a perfect spot for this little iconic urban baseball field. The Foundry Giants were an all-black men's baseball team that played for the Studebaker Industrial Baseball League in the 1920s. We don't know, obviously, their whole story, but we know enough to know that this is an important group of men laboring in the Foundry and building our community that is distinctly South Bend. I put this together later.
I think something that surprised me is how little the South Bend community knew about the Foundry Giants. This team was amazing. Like, they were winning so many games. They were doing things in the community.
That's kind of the way I was thinking.
Yeah. I took a community exploration class with Professor Carlson. There was a little bit of a research component in the fact that we had to redesign kind of the Foundry Field brand, but also kind of explore the Foundry Giants, the Foundry itself, and Studebaker.
And then the idea would be you drew cards.
But the designs themselves, we actually got to pull out a bunch of old baseball material and see how things were actually designed back in the 1920s and 30s when the Foundry Giants were playing. I think we essentially captured the glimpse of what it would have been like back then, which was super cool.
The reality is that the Foundry Giants were playing at a time when our governor in Indiana was a card-carrying KKK member, and segregation is only getting worse in our country.
It was a really compelling story to hear the ways that they were kind of X'd out of a lot of community life just because they were black.
I decided to, like, just start doing some preliminary research to just kind of see what I could find. And so through that, I found Alonzo Poindexter. And then from there, the project evolved into looking at this family more generally. And then they're moving on into other careers, into like Alonzo becoming like one of the first black deputy sheriffs here in the city.
I think it's really important that our history of South Bend include the diversity of who our community really is. We kind of observed that within South Bend, the public art that currently existed wasn't very representational of our community. We decided we really needed this project to bring in artists that represented the Foundry Giants in this case through race, ethnicity, and gender.
Yo, so this is the mural I flew out to Tulsa, Oklahoma for. That Jackie Robinson one right there.
And had come across Thomas Detour Evans from a mural he had done of Jackie Robinson in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
And, you know, it got a lot of love. So I'm super happy, super stoked about it.
He's an educator at heart and has inspired a lot of mural artists throughout the country by his content that he's created.
Hope you like that, and I will see you next time. Peace.
I thought, wouldn't it be great if Thomas would be willing to come to South Bend and do a mural? So I reached out to him with a very lengthy email, and he was kind enough to reply. And so he gave us advice and kind of feedback on that, and then agreed to become the first visiting artist that would come to South Bend, work with youth, create a mural that would depict this history and contribute to the community in large.
How many years have I been painting? Right now I am 38. So, ooh, is that bad? Am I too old?
Yes. Since I was born.
Any other questions?
How much money do you get making?
Ooh, you trying to pocket check. Instagram, I have about 94,000, I believe. Yeah, give a round of applause.
Detour was, by the end, was a part of our community. The way he invested in the youth that were there from Boys and Girls Club, and then to hear him speak about representation and his art practice and this history of these black men in our community was just, for me, a real highlight to that week.
Representation is so important, and we are glad children and young adults can see someone who looks like them break down barriers like our grandfather did.
That set the stage for the groundbreaking, where we had roughly 25 Poindexters to see the mural that depicted their grandfather, great-grandfather on the wall.
Bringing back that history to people who may not have known has been really special to kind of see that connection put together.
Some of their family came from like as far as like Arizona to come here because they were so proud. I've done a lot of work here at Notre Dame, like a lot of different assignments, a lot of papers, a lot of research, and I think a lot of it has been important to me. But I think what was special about this was that I got to see like what my work meant to other people.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You see why this is important to this community, to this family. And I think that was a really powerful, really surreal experience for me to see like how my work became real.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Meeting the family and like having them like come up, hug me and just be like, I'm so grateful, like thank you so much. That really meant a lot.
You are part of the family forever.
Thank you so much.
So it just feels like everything kind of came together to make sure like that we were all there in that moment so that we can experience that together.
How you doing? I'm okay.
I was super glad to see the turnout and see that the community really showed up for themselves, I think, is the biggest part, is they went and they were excited about it.
Part of what we began thinking about was, how do we make this more than a baseball field? How do we make it a living museum, something that tells the story of underrepresented sport in baseball and softball in our community, and does it in a responsible way that gives voice to those community members that have played, have also been contributors to the growth of South Bend. The land that Foundry Field is on was kind of underutilized. There was no actual intention to make a baseball diamond there. So that lack of intention or follow through spoke a lot to the neighborhood, because that neighborhood hasn't had the focus, and because it's so close to the Boys and Girls Club, it's a really perfect place. It's a beautiful place for an urban baseball field. And so we've been preparing that land for a high-quality baseball field. We scraped 2 feet of dirt off, did some leveling, bringing in infield soil that's a specific mix for baseball fields, replanting all the grass, turning the walkway into a warning track, and then putting a hedge that'll make the right field wall a living wall.
Bringing these things into the community is going to make the community a lot more prideful and happy to be there, which is why we wanted to put Foundry Field where it is and why we wanted to have things like that, just where it can be a place where the community can really come together.
A big part of the Notre Dame mission is to like remember that we're a part of this South Bend community. And so I think that like when we really take the time to do that and like meet the people and go to the places outside of like Notre Dame itself, I think that that's really powerful, and that's what Notre Dame wants us to do.
And those moments of like Notre Dame students that were in the class saying like, when I come back from my class reunion, I want to come see the field. I'm trying not to cry, but those are just really powerful things. Like, how do we take the work that we do in the class and not just lock it in the past? For them to see like the history is alive and it is real, and the stories are active, was just really rich.
So we really hope that Foundry Field will be a place where intergenerational play will happen, that moms and dads, aunts and uncles will be playing with kids. The kids will be getting coached and learning about team sports, about community, and about history now, and these issues of race, representation, and access in South Bend.